Let's get started here with View from the Top. Our first holding company media agency is going to be Aegis. I want to invite them to the stage with the moderator, the always illustrious Mr. Tony Nethercutt. Take it away, Tony. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
My name is Tony Nethercutt. As Perrin said, I am General Manager of North America for Mojiva. Your microphone's not on. It would be nice if we turned on mics, Perrin.
Yeah, turn on the mics. They should be all on.
Now they're on.
Okay, there we go.
Again, I'll start over. Hi, my name is Tony Nethercutt, General Manager of Mojiva. And we are here with Aegis, holding company including Isobar, Carat, and iProspect, who are with us today on stage. Joined to my immediate left are Jason Newport from Carat, Aubrie LaMar from iProspect, and Michael Nicholas from Isobar. I'll let each one of them talk for a couple seconds about what they do and their various divisions of Aegis. And then we'll have a short presentation from Michael about the company. So let's start with you closest to me, Jason.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jason Newport. I'm the head of mobile strategy and the mobile practice at Carat. Carat is Aegis Media's flagship media services agency.
Hi, I'm Aubrie LaMar. I am the mobile lead out of our Dallas-Fort Worth office. And iProspect is the digital performance marketing agency of Aegis.
Hey, I'm Michael. I work at Isobar, which is the creative arm of Aegis, and I work in strategy.
Cool. So with that, why don't you get on up and start the presentation.
So we wanted to try something a little bit different. Everybody's been to these, and they're sometimes a little bit, when it's just a bunch of people talking, we wanted to kind of frame it and ground it into something. So bear with us a little bit. We'll see if this works. We wanted to kind of have a walled-in discussion about mobile because it's so big. And so the question was sort of always this, which is, why is there all this money being spent in advertising? And that's just an advertising number. That's not even a marketing number for a lot of people in the room. Advertising is one thing. Like, we build a lot of things, like applications and websites. That doesn't even count in a 500 billion plus number. And roughly, almost 90% of people in the world, roughly, depending on who you believe, have a phone. And in case you wonder, toothbrushes are at about 70%. So I always think there's some mobile opportunity there. But the interesting number is probably that number, which everybody's familiar with and everybody wants to know, is why do we only get 1%? And that's what we wanted to talk a little bit about today. What do we need to do? What do we need to change to get brands and clients excited about it? And so normally we talk a lot about this stuff. And these are all very real things, right? Cookies, UDID, privacy, smartphone divides, all these things, tracking, retargeting. And we're going to talk about none of these today. I think a lot of people in this room are probably going to solve these maybe today. And there's going to be a lot of talk about these today. But we thought, well, let's leave this for somebody else. Because one of the questions we kind of asked ourselves was, if all of those things were solved today, do we really believe that we would actually be seeing that 1% number higher today? If none of these things existed, if there was no problems at all, do we think mobile is ready, and do we think we're doing a good enough job to get clients psyched about it? And I think our answer was actually no, that we didn't think that number would go much more than 1 or 2%, whatever it is. The issue, although we like to point at a lot of very tactical real issues, there are real issues with how we sell it, how we think about it, and how the clients accept it or don't accept it. And I think that's a really interesting thing, and that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today. So the issue to us is kind of this idea of the huge story versus small stories. And I think the huge story is probably the first slide, right? All that money, all those people, right? But the smaller stories are like the stories that we all tell, which is like a mobile media story, or I might make an application story, or a performance marketing story, or a search story. These are all really small stories. They're all very fragmented. They're all very atomized, the way we think about these things. And I think what we wanted to talk about today was maybe how we talk about it bigger, make it bigger. And if we can make it bigger for clients, they can get more engaged in it. And that actually is to us, the real barrier. And I think something came up in the green room. We were talking about like television, like, in selling cars. And it was like, nobody has an attribution model. Nobody clicks on a TV ad, right, and then goes to a dealership and buys. But I'll tell you right now, General Motors has no problem attributing that television commercial to that Chevy that gets bought in the showroom. And we need to start thinking about it and focusing less on what we can't do and more on what we can do. So the way we kind of think about this is, and at our company, we really only have kind of specialist brands, right? Like they do what they do, they do what they do, we do what we do, but we all do it together. I don't do what they do, and they don't do what I do, but the point is it's very focused in that way, and we understand that. So people and customers, they don't think about mobile as a channel. They don't. It's experiences. Sometimes they're extensions of other experiences, but in general, it's not a channel. Nobody goes, I'm going on mobile now. That doesn't happen. And I think the problem is clients, brands, and us, and whoever is the cart and whoever is the horse doesn't really matter. We're not constructed that way. Like, he works in mobile media. I work in mobile technology or digital technology, right? We're constructed that way. That's the way we do things. And I think that's what we have to start thinking about. So how do people experience mobile? Well, this is just the way we think about it. And what we wanted to do was just kind of ground the discussion in this so we could then have a discussion inside of it that you will get something out of, I hope. So everybody understands that there's this convergence going on in the world, and we have all these devices and all these services, right? And the services are from Apple, they're from Amazon, they're from Microsoft, they're from Google, and we get all these connected people. But I think the way we like to start thinking about it is it's not just connected people. It's not a bunch of people on mobile things. It forms these connected cultures. That's what we like to call them. Some people call them networked people, or they call them groups. We like to call them cultures. And the idea is there might be cultures around being a mom, for instance. That's a connected culture. You don't know, you're not directly networked with these people. They might not be friends with them on Facebook, but you're all part of a connected culture of being a mom. But you might be also part of a connected culture of owning a Corvette. You can still do that too. But I think that's where it gets interesting is when we start thinking about this for brands in connected cultures, we kind of get where we need to go. And what we've uncovered in kind of when we talk about connected cultures is this idea that almost all connected cultures are based on these four things. Maybe not all four, but actually, in reality, it really is. And the way we sort of think about it is just, and this is just the way we think about mobile because it's easier for us. Content, right? Consuming, making, collecting. That could be listening to radio, too. I mean, it could be taking a picture, but it's also obviously what we think of like video, rich media, whatever. Community, who am I connected to? Commerce, buying and selling. In spaces, where am I going? Still a little bit different than location. We were talking about that. It's not just where I am right now. It's where I might want to be or where I'm going. And then we sort of say, okay, if we have these four things underpinning, you get these connected cultures, and the connected cultures are kind of where the brands live. Like, this is how we discuss it with them. This is how we make it big for them. This is how we make them understand it and make it large without getting in discussions about tracking and retargeting. I mean, obviously, we talk about those things, but we need them to understand things on this level. And then we have our groups, whether it's iProspect, Carat, us, we come together and we handle the content, spaces, commerce, and community. And obviously there's tons of data around all that. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. But I'll tell you what's interesting is how we think about it. And we're guilty too, right? This is us. This is what we look like, the three of us. And this is how we talk, right? Banners, expandables, mini sites, applications, wearable computing, display units, maps, directions, offers, search. Like, we make everything artificially small. Right? And the problem with that is when we atomize it like this, it's hard to get the clients to really get excited about it. And we need to figure out how we can talk. We're not going to change our agencies. We're not going to change the brands. But the trick is, how can we be organized like this and understand this and still deliver on these connected cultures? And that's what we're going to kind of talk a little bit about today. So hopefully that makes it very clear as mud.
Very clear. So let's start with the connected cultures notion and the fact that you said the brands in your speaker's notes that I read, said the brands, particularly brands, have a place at the center. You mentioned moms, but why do you think brands?
I think brands actually have a really good opportunity if we think about it like that and think of it less about like kind of networked or less about kind of connection, but the idea that there's a connected culture around this brand, right? When I'm out in the world, the brand never leaves me, and I'm also attached to all these other people. Like if I have a Chevy Tahoe, okay? I'm tacitly connected in a culture of Chevy Tahoe people. I might not know them personally. I might not be actually connected to them on Facebook, but this kind of organization and connected culture exists to the brand and to other people who are involved in the brand. And I think that's what we try and focus on, and then we try and focus on in those building blocks.
Okay, so we'll go through some examples of how you do that in a second. Let's just remind everybody the four pillars that Michael mentioned: content, spaces / location, where I am or where I'm going to be, community, and commerce. And let's start with content. you said that several of your clients are already kind of getting in the content business, and you're encouraging that. What's your experience there thus far, and where do you want to take it?
Yeah, so I think the best example probably of that that we have up here today is although there are many others, is Disney. Disney is a content company. Why don't we, if we could, click on the top left image. We'll take a look at that work. So Disney, you guys obviously, everyone saw the early work with Levi's and Shazam, with Old Navy and Crispin and Shazam. This is something that we did over Christmas to deepen engagement with the viewers of Disney's Christmas Day Parade. We handle the media for Disney Parks and Resorts. Obviously, it typically is always the same goal, right? Increase awareness, drive transactions, work your way through the purchase funnel and establish the role of the channel. We partnered with Shazam just to create new content discovery opportunities. So during the Christmas Day Parade on ABC, there was an opportunity to Shazam the full length. Shazam was integrated throughout the program length. Typically, it's 30-second TV spot. You see the Shazam logo, and you have the opportunity to engage. This was a program length integration. So I think we're seeing more cross-channel opportunities with mobile. And I thought it was interesting the speaker earlier speaking to attribution and budget allocation to mobile, and is it enough? Is it going to get bigger? I think that there are a lot of owned and even earned assets and opportunities that leverage mobile today that perhaps don't get credit when it comes to breaking out the allocations and that kind of thing. Obviously, the time spent with mobile on the consumer side is substantial, and it still outweighs the budgets allocated to the category. But we are seeing more. I'm excited about the integration within TV, within the print group. So we don't think about mobile necessarily as a channel. It's a true touch point. It goes across all media categories. If you've been in mobile for a while, you've certainly tried every angle possible to increase the understanding of the category and get other channel experts to participate in the opportunities as well. So this one worked very well. You won't see a whole lot of results, on these case examples, but I can tell you that anyone who spent anything in mobile in 2011, be it 500,000 to 5 million, all of those clients have at least quadrupled their budgets, this year and certainly beyond. So we're really looking forward to continuing our relationship with Shazam. This one enabled us to allow consumers to discover, their smartphone applications, to learn about the different parks and resorts. There's a social piece to it as well, to connect them with their peer network with Disney content at the middle. So Disney's a good example where they have a ton of content to leverage, and as content becomes more synonymous with advertising, it's certainly mobile is a place we need to be.
And the one thing I like about that is that you also included one of your other pillars that we'll get to, which is community. So there's some shareability of this content as well. Was creative at the front and center of that for mobile? Did you start there? Did you start with something else?
Yeah, can we just go back really quick? So, thanks. Yeah, so creative. The nice thing about Disney is that you don't, there's not a whole lot of assets that you need to create. There's a lot in the bank. There's a lot that's already canned, so it becomes, about optimizing it, for the mobile experience and those mobile discovery opportunities, whether it's in TV or print, or beginning and ending, within mobile. So. Disney's a sort of a nice, an excellent client to have, because they think like a big content company. We don't have to get into, like with some other clients, the syndicated content game, where we're creating, web content, for example, around an affinity interest. They already have a lot going for them.
So you mentioned Disney obviously is a logical choice for content because that's their business. How about for your brands that aren't content makers anyway? What do you tell them?
I guess that's the softball for me. We make a lot of content. That's why the way Jason and I work together is, if it's Disney, and we work a lot with Disney, they have a lot of stuff. A lot of times they'll come up with an idea of what they have in the bank. I kind of like that. We may build something around it. We may not. We may execute with a partner like Shazam. I think there's an example. If you go back to the grid of in the lower left. We did this thing with CocaCola, us and BBH for Sprite, called the Uncontainable Game. And the idea was...
We're looking for the most talented, undiscovered ballers on the planet.
Yeah, you don't have to mute it, but you guys probably all seen this because it's been bludgeoning you, like if you watch the NBA at all. But the idea was, like, we knew months ago that there was a lockout. We needed to use the assets. We knew we were going to be able to shoot the assets, and that's fine. But the idea of this really was mobile at its core. We wanted to get people to create content as their entry form, their ticket, if you will, to get into this pickup game that LeBron and Kobe were going to run. So yes, there's content up there that's canned, but if you keep playing it, well, there you'll see the content that people have uploaded, in like literally thousands and thousands of videos have been uploaded, much more than is normal for what Coca-Cola typically sees. So this was a content, this was to have, the idea was to have both canned stuff that we actually make, but also have user-generated content be a part of it too. So the clients want both.
Okay, so let's talk about spaces for a second. Location. How often are you working location in? What are your best practices there?
Yeah, so I think for location, a lot of people are using it to get their customers in the door, and I love that because with mobile, I mean, your customers are around the corner, so it's about how do we get them in the door, and that's great. So the best example I have for this, if you go back, if you go to the top secret example, we had an athletic retailer that essentially, based on some geofencing radius, said, hey, if you're looking for my brand, if you're looking for a product, we're going to give you an incentive to come in the store and purchase.
Shouldn't we just be able to tap that? Should that work?
Tap it?
Tap. There we go.
I
Tap
don't think
that
so.
Nice job.
Wrong one.
Oh,
He's kidding.
I'll paint the picture. Anyway, so search. So they were searching for the brand name, they were searching for a product, and essentially an offer came up, and they took it to the store, and through their POS system, they were able to track that this person came through mobile. Great way to get them in the store to purchase. I think what I would like to see, sorry, I'm getting a ton of feedback. Something that I would like to see is it more of a competitive advantage. So, with mobile, people are constantly, looking for information, they're researching, but how do we actually come to get them rather than them come to us? And so I think, let's conquest and, elevate our bids, when someone's in our competitor's retail location, or...
He's got the right image up now.
Oh, perfect. That's the Google offer. But anyways, yeah, so let's use it as a competitive advantage. Let's get them to come to our store, get them to come to our site. 40% of all walkouts are because of smartphone research, so go to them. Search is great because they're looking for you, but make it easy on them, and I think we're going to have a lot better results. But again, it's all about measuring, so we'll have to get there too. So.
Any people who should not be using location? I mean, why wouldn't you use it? Why wouldn't you want to know?
I haven't found a reason not to. I think at the end of the day, you have to figure out how your customers want to interact with you via location. But I think there's a time and a place. Even if it's just from a competitive standpoint, I think we can figure it out. Pharma is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I mean, there's ways around it.
Okay, are you putting location right into the ad, so dynamically serving, someone's in Poughkeepsie, serving a Poughkeepsie?
Absolutely. So, we can do it through location extension, so it actually drops in the location, the closest location to where they are. So that's a really easy way to do it. Or if maybe there's not a location, we're dropping in an offer, so we say, hey, even if there's not a store close to you, we can get it to you in 2 days with free shipping. So it's all about encouraging the conversion, whether it is via location or just via an offer.
You want to go back to one of those creative examples? They couldn't hear you. Which one to queue?
Yeah.
Which one do you want to queue up? I can help you here.
That was it.
Okay, you got it. Okay.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Just making sure.
Thanks.
Just for Tony.
Thank you, Perrin. Okay, so how about data providers? Bonin mentioned data being really important in his speech. Are there any people like PlaceIQ that you're using, or other ways to get at data?
Yeah, I mean, we were, working with, Duncan and PlaceIQ. There's a lot of third-party sources, that we're using. Whether it's, data collection that has implications for the exchange, on the DSP side, but certainly, when it comes to location and targeting, for a retail client, especially like the Home Depot, for example, it's something that, is essentially a part of every mobile campaign that we do. We do a lot of planning and buys around store radius, proximity marketing. We've done a lot of geofencing, and to Aubrey's point, a lot of conquesting in competitor locations. So, Lowe's or Sears or whatever the case might be for some of those co-funded opportunities. One of the more, I think interesting things that we've done recently is a mobile circular program that we did with Millennial. This was interesting, I think, because it's an example of rich media. It's an example of location targeting, and it also really solved for a core business challenge of the Home Depot, which is to or goal, which is to decrease dependency on print, but still, distribute local relevant offers. So you all, see and probably get sick of the FSIs or the Sunday circulars that you see out there. Home Depot has a huge commitment to that, and they have had for many years. They're looking to evolve that, and that's what we did with this program. So basically, based on your location and depending, on where you were on the mobile web, click on the banner, and you would see, 5 to 6 products that were available at the nearest store, and all the product detail pages were actually integrated with the ad unit, so it didn't require a whole lot to discover those opportunities, and that sort of sped the path from discovery to, obviously, conversion and ultimately advocacy. This worked really, really well. I delivered more traffic to their mobile optimized site than anything we had done previously. So the nice thing about it is that that we can look to this. We got to run on the board. We can refine it, and then ultimately scale it and get to something more interesting, like shop local integration and dynamically serving up inventory information. Home Depot is good because they have so many products, so many SKUs, and pesticides in the Southeast are different than those in the Northwest. So it's exciting, I think, for the relevance of mobile to expand to. Yeah, thank you, Michael. To expand to other groups outside of media who want to exhaust inventory, whether it's in a supply chain issue or a local market, whatever it might be. But they've been really good at working with us around educating the store associates as well in terms of speaking to these things.
And this ad does a nice job of leveraging a couple of your pillars, right? It starts out local, as you said, but a big part of this is commerce. So let's talk about commerce for a second. How much of this was true commerce? If you clicked on the ad, could you actually buy it, and or was it just making people aware so they went into the store to purchase?
Yeah. So Home Depot happens to have 3 smartphone apps. iOS, Android, and Windows 7. They also have mobile optimized sites and fully functional mobile commerce, and also buy online or even on the mobile site and pick up in store, which is a big push for them right now. So Home Depot typically is focused on the transaction happening at retail. There's not a whole lot of drop shipping of lawnmowers or that kind of thing. So they focus a lot on laborers and the professional. And by professional, I mean tree removal guys or a plumber. And most of those guys are in the store every day, if not every other day. So they've done all the right things. I think from an infrastructure perspective, you probably read about a lot of the stuff that they've done in store with with NFC and with Wi-Fi in stores, and now it's just a matter of connecting all those dots, which will obviously have consumer implications on ease of purchase, and also attribution implications when it comes to discovery of the product, and then obviously tying it back through to cash wrap.
Okay, so speaking of attribution, and Michael mentioned it also, and I think even Bonin, that's hugely important for all of us to calculate the ROI. You'd like to be able to get away from that if you're doing pure branding. But what are you doing today to make sure that they know that the sales are happening?
Yeah. So yeah, attribution is a question. I think it's about a client like the Home Depot, for example. is very, I know every client we could say is very ROI driven, obviously. The way they think about their brand is, from a value perspective, so it's very much a high volume, special buy sort of perspective. Whereas a Disney, they understand that content plays a role, and they're willing to invest in content, even if it's not, directly monetizing that content, as in selling that content. They understand that the value of that content plays a different role, in terms of, eventually creating a transaction opportunity. When it comes to mobile, and the Home Depot, I think they've had a gut commitment from the beginning that mobile was important, not just from a media perspective, but from an operational and an infrastructure perspective. It also makes a lot of things easier, for them, not just on the buy side, but internally as well, within supply chain and kind of the in-store environment. I guess like if we think about what we've been measuring, even in digital for the past 10 years or so, the way media is bought, sold, and measured. Are we measuring the right things? We've all had conversations about attribution. I would just ask, are we measuring the right things? And we certainly, with every client, I think these days take a more holistic approach to the role of the channel and the impact on sales, and we try to look more at quarter over quarter, or certainly year over year impact. And think about it, from a cohesive perspective rather than always being so channel driven.
Okay, and you mentioned measuring the right things. There's a number of ad networks out there that are starting to use third-party people to help do attribution. One of them is called AdX. So I know there's a number of people that are using them in other places to try and help you make sure that you do that, and then you can give attribution to whatever ad network or whatever media partner it came from. So that's pretty cool. IAB came out recently with in the last few days, saying that they felt like, according to surveys they have run for mobile, 70% of mobile users do some sort of commerce per month. A lot of it is fairly low dollar amounts, because 38% of the people who spent $21 or less. So it's not massive. But you had a nice experience, Aubrie, with Horchow. So tell us a little about that.
Yeah, there's a couple retailers that I think there's a time and a place for mobile, and it's just a right fit. I think in particular, if we look at a couple retailers, like the retailers that are going after the teenage demographic, so 16 to 24. I mean, our brands that are going after that demographic are actually seeing a higher conversion rate, and sometimes AOV on mobile than they even do on tablet. The luxury retailers are seeing a higher AOV and conversion rate on tablets. So I think it's all about where your key audience and demographic wants to interact with you. I think to take it a step further would be, how do your customers want to interact with your brand? And I think, there's a lot of things, but I think at the end of the day, we're like, revenue, they have to purchase. Well, how do they want to purchase? And a good example of this is Nutrisystems, and I think I have it up on the example. I think it may be, if I remember right, it's the top right. Yeah, so anyways, if you'll click on that. So when Nutrisystem launched, they just had a regular ad on brand, non-brand, weight loss type of terms. Well, they were realizing that the majority of their customers wanted to speak to a representative because they wanted to get familiar with the program. They wanted to get familiar with the food. They wanted to better understand what Nutrisystem was going to do for them and vice versa. And so they were really looking for the phone number. Well, let's just put it right in the ad. It's still a CPC, and then it's just easy to call. So no, they're not actually converting through the mobile ad, but the mobile ad is a huge influencer of actually getting that conversion via phone because it was easy to find. So I think, it's all about demographics. It's all about, who your brand wants to be, but it's also about how your customer wants to interact with the brand. And when you're thinking about all of those things, I really do think you can find a better fit for commerce, whether it be direct or just an influencer of that. So.
Cool. So click to call is working for you?
Absolutely, yeah. I would say for hotels, it's great. For Nutrisystems, it's great. There's a couple other, like pharmacies work really well, so.
I think that says a lot about the people using the phone. When we first started 4 years ago doing click to call, I can't tell you how many recordings we got where people would like, why are you calling me? And they actually were the ones that made the phone call. So that's good that people are starting to understand their phones and actually make a phone call. Let's talk community for a second. Diageo example you have, and if we can pull that up, I thought did a really good job of doing community, including Facebook and Foursquare, but it also had content, it had spaces. It didn't have commerce, obviously a little tough to sell. Which one is the Diageo?
Captain Morgan's.
Captain Morgan.
Yeah, they get really upset when we sell booze over the phone.
Yeah. Captain's Conquest is an ambitious, massively multiplayer mobile game based on the bravado, leadership, and skill of Captain Morgan that merges your physical and social world into your own legend. In Captain's Conquest, you battle your friends for control of your city, challenge other ships near you in a skill-based 3D battle mode. There's strength in numbers, so join a fleet with your friends. Conquer territory for your fleet by docking at real-world locations around you via Foursquare. By proving your skill in battle and exploring your city, you rise through the ranks with bigger and bigger ships to become captain of the entire fleet. Captain's Conquest features over 80 unique items to discover. Buy and sell virtual loot hidden in the physical world in a dynamic economy. And use the innovative scope feature to scan real bottles of Captain Morgan to unlock valuable in-game rewards. Toast your conquests along the way by sharing to Facebook and Twitter. Then watch thousands of players battle for the nation in a real-time feed featured on the Captain Morgan Facebook dashboard. Captain's Conquest, an engaging platform that brings the captain's legacy and his adventurous spirit to a 21st century medium.
It almost makes me want to give up my Mount Gay, but almost. Again, community, you worked in Facebook, Foursquare, you worked in fantastic content that obviously looked like you made it for mobile from the start, so that started mobile-centric. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So this was, that was obviously the application was designed by Captain Morgan's Creative AOR, which is Anomaly, in partnership with Unit 9 or Unity, who did a lot of the development on it. I think this, more than anything, was a good example of a day zero partnership between, agencies, creative media, PR, promotional, all the local activity that happened with managed bar nights. Certainly, what's core to the experience, as you recognized, is community. Diageo, has a big Facebook commitment, media commitment. So there was a lot of custom integration done there with, the open APIs you saw. A lot of, media, that's being placed on Facebook to support, the app. A lot of Foursquare integration. So you can see there that. The Foursquare experience of checking in and seeing who's around you to engage them in a virtual battle. It's almost like everything that you could possibly think of was put into that app. From a social gaming perspective, from an integration with the physical world perspective. I was really proud of Diageo, just from the perspective of committing to a mobile asset in such a grand way, and understanding the value of the medium, as a true sort of evergreen brand asset, which is what this is becoming. I mean, you saw some of the early numbers there. They're substantial, and for their audience, it certainly makes sense, and it can connect them with, and has, with each other, on a proximity basis. There's a piece that allows you to find not only where people like you happen to be, but also where the product is as well. So there's a truer sort of branded utility play there as well. It's done really well. They have a lot of registered users. It's on iOS and Android, so you can find it there. And I would anticipate we continue to support it for a very long time.
Cool. You mentioned Facebook, Michael, to me earlier, and how you felt about Facebook versus some of the other places you could develop community.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk a little about that?
Well, I think we were just having a discussion. There's a lot of interesting discussion going on about Facebook for all the obvious reasons, and I think there's a, depending on who you believe. I mean, yes, we're all frustrated with Facebook because they won't do what we want them to do, but they never said they were going to. But one of the things I think is interesting, and now it's a really good example too, and you've seen a couple examples, is Facebook actually works really, really well to do advertising and marketing on, but you have to build on top of it. They provide the APIs. I mean, you're right. It's not a turnkey, like here's a unit, you're ready to go. So it's a little bit more involved than a media play, and you have to develop on top of it. But we've been really successful in that, and I think not just Facebook, but the ability to tap into the other networks too, building sort of a network of the networks you're already on, so I get a little bit from this network and a little bit from that network. sort of the big data plays we're starting to see. We're able to process in real time more. So if you go to, let's see, where is it? Oh, this one right here, this sort of bluish one. Yeah. So Samsung came to us like 2 years ago, and they were like, well, we have this 4-year commitment for the Olympics, but the problem is people only care about the Olympics for 4 weeks. What can you do? And we came up with this idea about figuring out how Olympic you were, right? This idea of like we all have these sort of almost, we wanted to call it the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon Olympic game, but they wouldn't let us. But ultimately it ended up being the Samsung Olympic Genome Project, and the idea was just if I give you access to my big data, which is for the most part is probably a lot of your Facebook profile and some other data points, any networks I want to hook in, they can cross-reference it with an Olympic database of what they know about athletes, and then we can give you a score based on who you're connected to. And the idea, I mean, this is fully mobile optimized too. It obviously works in Facebook and it obviously works on the web, but it was really important for us from the beginning to be able to have this be a daily activity that pushed and pulled all the time, and your scores were changed and moved. So we built it. It's HTML5, but it's inside of Facebook, even in the mobile app, and we've been really successful in that. So we can just build it and it scales, as opposed to having a standalone app. Which, by the way, I mean we build a lot of that stuff, but it gets into some discussions we had earlier about like when to build an app and when not to build an app, which I guess is a whole other question. But you can leverage community really well. If you build on the communities that people are already part of. And I know that sounds really obvious, but just a year ago, people would be like, great, let's build our own Olympic community. And they would be absolutely adamant that that was the answer. And you'd build it and nobody would come, and then they would blame the agency and we'd all go. But I think now the communities are so robust. And they're also this idea of, like I said before, about being able to connect not only to Facebook, but then bring in Foursquare or leverage some of your LinkedIn or these other, and even some of these smaller, more niche things. I mean, Instagram is now obviously on the front of everybody's mind for a billion reasons, but before it was, before it was something we were seeing as a really interesting thing to pull in on the side and doing things with. So you're part of all of these networks, and now I think the brands can leverage these networks into a community without having to make you join anything new. And I think that's what was really powerful. And this just launched a little while ago, and that's actually me, so my score isn't that great, but these are the people I'm connected to, and that's how Olympic I am. But it's really cool because every day my phone gives me a little bit of something, but it gives it to me through the community I'm already a part of, Facebook. And we think that's something that can be leveraged really well. So even though there's a lot of talk about, Facebook's not doing what I want, which I think I say that 5 times a day, if you can build on it, they'll work with you and you can do some really great things too.
Okay, so talk about that comment you made about build it and no one comes. Earlier, Bonin said that he's shifting all of his money to mobile. I think we all heard that. Didn't we all heard that?
Totally, I heard.
And making sure that, for the folks in the audience who have built an app or have spent a lot of money doing some really elaborate mobile website,
sure,
and then nobody got there, what's been your successes building things and then promoting them?
Yeah, sure. All right, I'll make some brash blanket statements that you all can write down. That guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I think in general, because a lot of clients come to us and we have these discussions a lot, which is, I come from part of the company that we make a lot of things. We're the makers, right? But we absolutely understand, I fully am behind when just because, I say this all the time, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I think if we all went app crazy and we all went sort of stat crazy and site crazy for a while. But in general, if you can't leverage the sensors inside the device, why are you building stuff? And we'll still build things like this, but the cost, the CPA, if you will, right, to pay us, then to push to an app and then get people to download it and then start realizing whether you're going to get any good activity off of it. If you don't have things inside of the app that use the sensors natively in the device, I will ask you why you're doing that. Now, there are legitimate reasons that people will give me for certain things, and that's fine, but it is my brash blanket statement. But I do think that forces 2 things. One, if you really want to do it, make sure you're leveraging the device as much as you can. And I think there's so many things that as you get more into the device, you become more intimate with it. There's amazing things that you can do. And the other thing is, if you don't want to do that, try and make it work with the systems that already work, because it's much more efficient for your clients. The lead times are much easier to deal with. No app stores, things like that. And for the consumer, you're already in something they're already in. You're not having them do something new behaviors, push alerts, things like that. So when you should and when you shouldn't kind of revolves around that for me.
Okay, and Jason, why don't you go over how you get people to get it on their phone in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting topic because you know, there's a lot of talk about, you know, not only, you know, should I do it and should it be an app or should it be, you know, mobile web or whatever it might be, you know, but once it's done, you know, what is the plan to you know, make it discoverable, you know? And one thing I'm always surprised by is that you know, the hardcore developers, or you know, the true, like, you know, publishers as developers versus brands as developers, you know, they know all of the, you know, the hardcore ways to get users. You know, a lot of that stuff's driven by Tapjoy, you know, by Flurry even. You know, a lot of the affiliate programs that are happening in mobile right now, a lot of the acquisition, you know, platforms that are out there in terms of just a law of averages approach to all the coin economies, and all the simple things too, you know, like the, you know, submission to app review sites and all the relationship management and influencer outreach that can go into, you know, getting a write-up, you know, on Engadget, or you know, some of the gaming review sites, that kind of thing, all the app review sites, Appalicious, et cetera. You know, and then also within the experience too, you know, prompting for reviews. You know, I see that a lot within, you know, the games that I download, but I don't see that a whole lot within the branded apps. And that could be, you know, that, you know, they're not aware of it, that it's important, but we have to get our reviews up, you know, for these branded apps. Every time I see, you know, a branded app, it typically has, you know, 2 or 3 reviews, and then I go over and I look at, you know, Jetpack or something, you know, I'll see like 1,000, you know, so, you know, those simple pieces, but then also the brands have so much going for them in terms of the owned assets, right, and also the tremendous amount of paid media that they have out there. So we do a lot, you know, we've done a lot historically with, you know, everything from keyword shortcodes to some of the new Zoov stuff, that you've seen on TV quite a bit with ESPN and Verizon, and then we're doing a lot of that now with the Home Depot. We also see, you know, more prevalence now in clients wanting to, you know, display the, you know, the iOS or, you know, the Android logos, you know, in their paid media, which has actually helped, you know, in my opinion. And then in store, you know, integration as well. So a lot more, you know, QR codes, and you know, you saw the Shazam stuff. So I think you see, you know, more opportunities sort of in those traditional channels to promote, you know, the mobile assets you've developed. But a lot of that is just, you know, collaboration within a large agency environment and sort of explaining the value, you know, of the asset.
Okay, so one of the things that doesn't quite fit into your pillars, but we've talked about it several times, is assets that you're creating along the lines of the actual ads themselves, and potentially rich media ads. Sure. If you could go to the PowerPoint for 1 second, guys, and there's a number of players that are, you know, doing spectacular work creating platforms. One of them's here today as a co-sponsor, Celtra. And another partner that we use sometimes is Fluent, and a relatively new one is Blur by Q. But if do you have the PowerPoint handy?
PowerPoint.
Somewhere. So this one is an ad from Fluent, where the, you know, ad is at the bottom of the page, conveniently disguised as a banner. And then the FedEx courier floats onto the screen and, you know, does what, you know, previously until recently was only doable in desktop. If you could run that again and refresh that page, you'll see just the, you know, the guy walks across and picks up the banner and walks off the page. Pretty cool. I don't know if we got a refresh, but maybe not. There we go. So invasive but kind of cute, tongue-in-cheek. Happens quick, calls attention to the ad, and then go to the next page down, and I think we have a fiat spot, or go to the fiat one, the second page. One more.
So I'm in a timeout because apparently riding the dog like, well, it's a small horse is frowned.
You want to go to fiat? You want to go to E-Trade?
Yeah, that's fine. Fiat.
All right.
So this is just taking the fiat. This is a mock. The other one actually ran. So this is just taking the fiat Super Bowl spot. And making it interactive, where during the course of the commercial, if you can take your eyes off the model, you can actually build a car. And if you notice across the bottom of the page, there are, you know, a number of the pillars that we've been talking about for connection and commerce, local.
Tony, don't you have a tattoo like that on your neck?
I'm never telling, Perrin. and it's not on my neck.
The Fiat 500 Abarth. You'll never forget the first time you see one.
And even though this is just a mock, we'd like to say you probably wouldn't forget the first time you saw it on a mobile device either, because at the end, the car you configured is actually there and built in real time. So that's just a few examples of pretty cool rich media that is just happening very recently. But Michael, your big issue with rich media is to get easier, larger scale, et cetera.
I don't have an issue. I think the issue is actually on my side, where I think, you know, we have whole departments of whatever you want to call them, production, creative, technology, whatever. They've been born in a world where we make everything in Adobe products, and then we web it and we know what it does. And now we have this extra thing going on where we think nobody really knows how to make that. It's interesting. So I think, but in the past 6 months, you brought up Celtra, and there's others too. They've really done a great job about almost bringing the suite to us. And I think it's up to us to really get better at educating our creative departments. Like, creative departments are like, what do you mean we're taking a meeting with a media vendor? Like, I'm like, no, it's not a media vendor. They have, this is about production. This is about being able to take your assets and quickly make rich mobile things. And it's funny, they kind of fight it, but then when they see it, they're like, this is amazing. So it's a lot of it is on, in my opinion, is kind of in the creative departments themselves, where traditionally these companies have been calling on the media departments or the media groups. And actually, there's now a lot of benefit from a production standpoint to get this rich stuff built, to let us know what's possible. Because if not, we've been like making, okay, great, let's make an iAd, and we make that, and that takes tons of hours and tons of money. But we could be building across lots of things if it was easier. And I think it's up to us to get smarter, faster. And I think we are getting a lot better in the past 6 months, but it's because the partners have really come to the table with some serious tools now. I think somebody along the way figured out that, like, you know, these guys in the agencies are never going to figure it out on their own. If we give them the tools, they'll build stuff.
I don't think they'll never figure it out. The sales community is incentivized to educate them as fast as possible, so they figure it out as soon as possible.
And they're educating us from a production standpoint, which I don't think that's ever really happened before in media. Like, you know, ABC doesn't come to us and tell us how to shoot TV. Right, it's interesting. But now this is what's happening, and that's kind of a new thing, but it's a really good thing.
Cool. Any comments from the media side about rich media?
Yeah, I think, sorry, you want to?
Well, we're running low.
Okay. Are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to leave some time for questions. So
okay.
You want to finish your thought, and we'll go to questions?
Sure.
Yeah, just really quick. So, you know, I think on the rich media side, you know, from, you know, probably a lot of these guys are here, right? Medialets and Crisp and Sprout and Fluent, certainly Celtra, Goldspot. You know, I think, you know, it's a scenario thing, and, you know, it's client by client and creative agency by creative agency. So my goal, you know, most of the time is to make it as simple for the planners to understand, you know, how to engage, you know, different buckets of the ecosystem for different things, and how to operationalize it and scale it as soon as possible. You know, some creative agencies, we work with the Richards Group a lot on Home Depot, so from the very beginning, you know, we get them acclimated with some of these rich media players so we can develop these solutions together. So that, you know, typically they're the brand steward, you know, they handle all the creative. You know, I know in years past it's been a lot of you know, networks, or certainly the rich media guys, you know, doing the creative for the media services agencies, and you know, the creative agency hasn't been considered, you know, as often I think as they are today, now that, you know, they see that they can have a real impact there. You know, I think it's also like with the rich media piece, it's figuring out the model. Is it a network model? Are they making their money from the ad serving? You know, is it simply the creative, you know, and on the production side, and that piece. So, you know, I think what you're seeing now, though, you know, within the agency is more the planners understanding, excuse me, each of the parties, and then, you know, having something to plug into, you know, and being compatible across network is essential. You know, all of these guys have to run on as many of the networks as possible. You guys are obviously a good example of that at Mojiva, just so that there's no hiccups along the way once you do your buys.
Cool.
All right, you want to go some questions in the audience? We're going to do 2 questions. All right, you were first, so I'm coming up to you here. All right, I like that. You're going to...
Yeah, no, really good question. So, you know, I would say both Home Depot and Diageo have developed, or we've developed with them and their other agencies, applications, right? Typically, the metric that you hear from the client that the request is we need, I'm just saying this as an example, we need 500,000 downloads in the first 6 months, you know? So the knee-jerk reaction from, I think, a lot of the, you know, or some of the planners and buyers is to, you know, to respond to that ask and get those. And that's why I mentioned, you know, Tapjoy and Flurry and some of those PI networks. You know, I think with larger brands, though, you know, over time, to your point, the download to usage ratio, you know, is obviously imperative. You know, they're in a game that's much broader than that application. So I'm not going to say we don't work with you know, the CPA partners to drive downloads. But we certainly recommend, you know, for example, in the Captain's Conquest example, you know, integrating the gameplay with rich media and, you know, distributing that across network partners so that they get some value, you know, in print or, you know, on TV. It's certainly something that we recommend, you know, across every plan, you know, which is all of that owned media and integration with paid media, and certainly the earned media piece. So it's typically a split, you know, but I think at Carat we do a pretty good job with integration, you know, across the board.
Yeah, I think, and just to add to that, I actually think it's different for all different clients. Some approach it with, we have this much money, you know, what should we do? Or we have this much money, we want an app, which is always crazy. But we look at it holistically. If there's that much, we can't build something that we can't afford to have anybody find it. So a lot of times that will dictate how we approach, and sometimes we'll say, well, if you really want to meet your communication objectives, you know, we'd recommend maybe actually spending more money, or the ratios like this, or don't build, you know, build on instead of build for, do an app, not do an app. So it just depends on how they approach it. Sometimes they come and they want something very specific, and they want a number, and we say, yeah, you're not going to get that because you haven't left enough money left over. So it just depends on what kind of company they are and how they think about it. But I'd say it varies, but we sort of ride that line in between telling them, you know, you probably shouldn't build something because your total CPA, if you will, or however you want to think about it, is too high, because once you get done with production and everything and you're pushing at it, it's too much money. We might say, you know, but at the same time, if they really want something, we'll give them the cost, because we can figure out if they want an app and they want that does X and they want 500,000 downloads, it's not that hard to calculate what it's really going to cost.
All right, guys, thank you very much. Let's give them a big hand. Thank you, guys. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right.